Mr. President, my colleagues who have come to the floor and spoken, let me say it was my intention today to come and ask unanimous consent for the Senate to consider immediately a 60-day extension of the Land and Water Conservation Fund in its current configuration. I won't be doing that. I think we're making progress towards unanimous consent in the United States Senate, which is the best way to get things done. So I will refrain from asking for that UC at this time. You know, Mr. President, if we don't act now, this program, which has been successful for over 50 years, will expire today, tonight, midnight. This program has delivered on its promise to conserve and enhance our natural landscape. LWCF was set up for 3 reasons. 1, to protect areas within our national parks and national forests, existing boundaries. And let me emphasize that, the existing boundaries. There's some that claim that this is Land and Water Conservation Fund is only to create new national parks or to expand our current national parks. No, in many cases, we've got end parcels that have been owned by individuals that we've waited for the generational change, for the opportunity to complete that footprint of a historic treasure. Land and Water Conservation Fund is that seed money to go in and match it with private dollars to get that end parcel and to buy it from a generation that also believes it should be protected. 2, it provides buffers for national trails, parkways, wildlife refuge, and military battlefields and parks. I might also add military bases. Fort Bragg, I call the Pentagon of the Army in Fayetteville, North Carolina, actually received conservation awards for the last several years for how they've treated the buffer zone around active military bases. Everybody's in conservation to some degree. It also was designed to provide matching grants to states and local governments for working forest, state and local parks, as well as recreation projects, what Senator Collins talked about. A lot of my colleagues on the other side of the Capitol have said, we don't want to reauthorize this because it doesn't do anything. This ought to all go state and local. Boy, I don't know how to do it any fairer than to let those that are really involved in conservation every day decide where the most valuable leverage of those dollars can go. And you notice, Mr. President, I'm tongue-twisted because we always have a tendency here to say federal dollars. These aren't federal dollars. These are dollars that were designed as royalties off of the expiration of the Outer Continental Shelf. Should come to about $900 million a year. But Land and Water Conservation Fund, when they go through this gauntlet of appropriations in Washington, seems to only get somewhere between $300 and $400 million a year. On a continual basis, they've been cheated from what the American people embraced and said, we want you to have this. Imagine what they could have done had they had the money. But that gets thrown into the general fund and it dissipates. Some have said, you don't need to reauthorize this today. There's $20 billion in the Land and Water Conservation Fund. No. I hate to tell you, America, it's sort of like Social Security. We've used that money for something else. There's an IOU in there, but it's been designated for a general funding reason. So it is important that we not decouple the funding mechanism, which is the royalty, from the authorized program. Now, some have said this is a land grab. Let me suggest to my colleagues, this is a land solution. This is actually one of the federal government programs that I can honestly say works. LWCF has supported 41,000 projects across the country in its life. In my state alone, Land and Water Conservation Fund has protected over 900 sites, from the Great Dismal Swamp National Wildlife Refuge to Mount Mitchell State Park, the Blue Ridge Parkway, Pisgah National Forest. In North Carolina, outdoor recreation contributes $7.5 billion in our state's economy and supports 95,000 jobs. This is not just about conservation. It is about the economy. It's hard for me to say to somebody from the West that the most visited national park in America is the Great Smokies, Tennessee and North Carolina, where most Americans would think it's out where you are. The most traveled national treasure, the Blue Ridge Parkway, is the entry point to North Carolina from Virginia. More Americans travel that road than any road in our federal park system. Now, let me just suggest that Senator Daines is not the only one that has pictures. This is from the Pisgah National Forest, where we have many spectacular sites. But without the LWCF, we wouldn't have protected this piece. An unbelievable environmental component. Now, they get better. This is a recent one, Catawba Falls. It's an LWCF success story. It was acquired in 2010 through LWCF money. And it made this fall open to the public. So for my detractors that say that LWCF shuts it down, it becomes part of the federal government, nobody can use it. No, LWCF's mission is to open up treasures like this for the use of the American people. And in the case that we put it to states, hopefully states convert that to access for hunters and to recreational use. The last one, I don't think Senator Daines has one that looks like this. Chimney Rock. How do you not protect something like this? Chimney Rock's in North Carolina. The site's a good example of a project that will be suspended if LWCF is not renewed. It's probably one of North Carolina's most loved monuments, but expansion of the site will halt eventually if LWCF does not receive the support. You see, the Land and Water Conservation Fund is dollar for dollar the most effective government program that's ever existed. It's hard for me to believe, with as much support on both sides of the aisle as this fund has, that it would be so difficult to get a unanimous consent request. But I am committed to work with my colleagues who still have reservations for some reasons, to try to work through those reservations and then to shorten our differences with our brethren on the House side that might not see this in the same light as I do. But I think when most Americans see a picture like this, they see something to save, something to protect, something that is enjoyed not by federal bureaucrats, by the average folks who travel there over the Blue Ridge Parkway and end up at Chimney Rock, who go on the Blue Ridge Parkway and end up at the Great Smokies. They weren't acquired because of the Land and Water Conservation Fund, but they're protected in many ways because of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. So I urge my colleagues, let us have a unanimous consent request. Let us pass this and send it to the House. And let us, at some point in the not-too-distant future, talk about a permanent reauthorization of the Land and Water Conservation Fund. This should not be an exercise that we have every predetermined number of years. It should last as long as the revenue source, which is our ability to explore our natural resources, and those natural resources fund the preservation of these historic and significant landmarks of America. I thank the Senator for his time, and I yield you back to balance.